Good morning. Our first reading is a poem that I have because Nyla shared it with me. I've been waiting for the chance to use this, by a poet named Aurora Levins Morales. It's a little bit longer, so I'm going to slightly abridge it. It's called Vahavta, which is a Hebrew word which means "and you shall love." It's the beginning of a prayer, "and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul." The poet is using some of the biblical formulations in this, but bringing us into today. Vahavta. Say these words when you lie down and when you rise up, when you go out and when you return, in times of mourning and in times of joy. Inscribe them on your doorposts, embroider them on your garments, tattoo them on your shoulders. Teach them to your children, your neighbors, your enemies. Recite them in your sleep here in the cruel shadow of empire. Another world is possible. Thus spoke the prophet Roque Dalton. Altogether they have more death than we, but altogether we have more life than they. There is more bloody death in their hands than we could ever wield unless we lay down our souls to become them, and then we will lose everything. So instead, imagine winning. This is your sacred task. This is your power. Imagine every detail of winning, the exact smell of the summer streets in which no one has been shot, the muscles you have never unclenched from worry, gone soft as newborn skin. The sparkling taste of food when we know that no one on earth is hungry, that the beggars are fed, that the old man under the bridge and the woman wrapping herself in thin sheets in the back seat of a car and the children who suck on stones nest under a flock of roofs that keep multiplying their shelter. Lean with all your being towards that day when the poor of the world shake down a rain of good fortune out of the heavy clouds and justice rolls down like waters. Defend the world in which we win as if it were your child. It is your child. Defend it as if it were your lover. It is your lover. When you inhale and when you exhale, breathe the possibility of another world into the 37.2 trillion cells of your body until it shines with hope. Then imagine more. Don't waver. Don't let despair sink its sharp teeth into the throat with which you sing. Escalate your dreams. Make them burn so fiercely that you can follow them down any dark alleyway of history and not lose your way. Make them burn clear as a starry drinking gourd over the grim fog of exhaustion, and keep walking. Hold hands. Share water. Keep imagining so that we and the children of our children's children may live. And the people said, amen. Our ancient reading is the beginning of Luke's gospel, the story we just heard with help from the kids. In the days of King Herod of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly order of Abijah. His wife was descended from the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. Both of them were righteous before God, living blamelessly according to all the commandments and regulations of the Lord, but they had no children. Elizabeth was barren. Both of them were getting on in years. Once, when he was serving as priest before God during his section's turn of duty, Zechariah was chosen by lot, according to the priesthood custom, to enter the sanctuary of the Lord to offer the incense. Now, at the time of the incense offering, the whole assembly of the people was praying outside. And there appeared to him an angel of the Lord, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zechariah saw the angel, he was terrified, and fear overwhelmed him. The angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son. You will name him John," or Yohanan. It means God is gracious. Then we have a second, shorter reading that's an even more ancient reading. It comes from the book of Lamentations, which you can guess from the title is a pretty sad book from a sad time. But this is what these 3 verses say out of the middle of chapter, or the end of chapter 3. "I called on your name, O God, from the depths of the pit. You heard my plea. Do not close your ear to my cry for help, but give me relief. And you came near when I called on you, and you said, 'Do not fear.'" What do you fear? That's the theme question of this Advent, which we have come to once again, living in a world that is full of fear. Living, as Luke put it, in the time of Herod. In the time of Herod means that there is a lot for just about everyone to fear from the actions of small-minded men who are terrified of their mortality. What do you fear? I fear getting shot in the head by a pepper ball. That's not really going to happen to me. I don't stand that close to the center of protests. It's not really much of an active fear that I have. But I've seen it play out in the news at least twice now. It's apparently a thing that ICE does when people in clergy collars engage in the seditious behavior, the dangerous behavior of public prayer. Isn't it good to call that dangerous? We haven't really had that kind of militarized presence in Philadelphia, at least not yet. Maybe we won't. This president is erratic, so it's hard to know. Who would have guessed that after they left Chicago, they would have headed down to Charlotte, North Carolina? My mom was less than a week past her liver transplant, still under care in a Charlotte hospital, when I started seeing cell phone footage shared on social media of ICE or Border Patrol agents goose-stepping through the halls of a hospital. I wasn't afraid for my mom. There's nothing about her that would cause her or my dad to be racially profiled. I'm not even certain that it was the same hospital. I did have a bleak moment of gallows humor when I found myself wondering what would happen if my mom's liver had come from an undocumented person. But that wasn't a real fear for my mom. I did fear for some of the people who were caring for her, as my dad expressed in our prayer time a couple of weeks ago. I did fear for some of the cleaning staff at the hospital, some of the other workers there. The New York Times shared a reporter's video from inside an after-school center that had agents show up 2 days in a row, standing out in the parking lot. The center caters to the families of immigrants from all over the world. The video shows the workers making emergency calls for backup on their phones, stationing themselves at the doors to put themselves in the way so that nobody would come into the building. And they ultimately closed down for a few days. Parents were afraid to bring their kids anyhow. In fact, across the school system of Charlotte, more than 20% of students stayed home during the government siege. In the time of Herod, what do you fear? In the time of the ancient Herod, there was plenty for the people to fear. He was a client king of the Roman Empire, meaning he relied on them for his position, which meant that his position relied on sending wealth back to the empire from his poor people. It also meant that it was his job to snuff out any whiff of rebellion before it reached the emperor's nose. There were no pre-existing democratic norms to hold on to, no kings marches for people to gather at with joy at being together, and clever signs. It was just economic exploitation and repression. And in that, life went on, as it always does. People found ways to hold their own dignity, to care for each other. Luke opens his gospel with a story of a priest named Zechariah who was going about his religious duties. He felt whatever he felt about living under occupation. He also carried the disappointment for someone of his age and status of having no kids, which in those days was often seen as some kind of judgment from God. And yet, he went about his work, which on this particular day entailed going into the holiest space in all of the temple by himself so that he could light an incense offering to God. It was a truly special job. This might literally have been a once-in-a-lifetime experience for him. There were 24 divisions of priests. I'm not sure how many priests were in each division, but I know that each of the 24 divisions served in the temple only twice a year. So there are not a lot of chances to have your name pulled out of the magic hat to get the special job of going in and lighting the incense. Somebody just thought of the sorting hat, I know. But there he was, groping along in the dark, or in the dim light, toward the Holy of Holies. There he was, hearing every footstep echo, feeling the pulse of every heartbeat in his eardrums. There he was, in that brief period of elevated solitude. There he was, dropping things and clutching his heart when someone showed up in front of him, calling his name and telling him not to be afraid. Which is kind of funny. There was a period of my life when I was one of those bad kids who thought it was really hilarious to sneak up on my mom and make her scream by yelling boo, popping out of places. I did that until she made it clear that there would be bodily harm and perhaps loss of life if I did it one more time. I decided I better not press my luck anymore. But I kind of imagine this story like someone sneaking up. Don't be afraid! It doesn't add up. It always makes me want to ask the angel, you're kind of new at this interacting with humans thing, right? Do not be afraid, as if there weren't plenty of things to be afraid of, not counting random spectral appearances in the time of Herod. But do not be afraid is one of the most often repeated phrases in the Bible. Not because there aren't enough things to be legitimately afraid of and weren't enough things to be legitimately afraid of, but because life keeps unfolding even so. Because the power of life is stronger than the powers of death. Even though Rome is still in charge, Zechariah will get the belated joy of parenthood. Centuries before that, the writer of Lamentations cried out amidst the brutality of the Babylonian Empire and got the same response. They're powerful, yeah, but they're temporary. Do not be afraid. Which is not the same, I don't think, as saying don't ever feel fear. That's a fool's errand. Fear can be useful. It can keep us alive. If our ancestors had not felt fear, some of us might not be here. A lot more of them might have been eaten by wild animals. The truly and totally fearless got selected out of the gene pool by wild boars and lions, or dinosaurs, I guess, if you go in for that young Earth stuff. I hear it more along the line. Thank you, Karen. I hear it more along the lines of, don't let your fear paralyze you. Which is why our Advent materials frame it as a question. What do you fear? Because naming our fears can allow us to change our relationship to them, to transform them, to tell them that they can come along, but they'll have to keep up. They can stand next to me at the rally, at the vigil. When the word got out in Charlotte that the federal government was about to blitz the city, churches moved into action. Some hadn't really thought about it before and made split-second decisions to get involved. Others had been preparing for months so that there was a network for some to join in with. One Presbyterian church invited an immigrants' rights group to come in and give a training on knowing your rights, on supporting your neighbors, and doing what you can to keep people safe. There were hundreds of people there. The training had songs. Of course it did. We heard that in the poem as well. Singing is one of the ways we don't get paralyzed by our fears. In middle school, my brother and I had a Wednesday night paper route in the winter months when it was dark early. That would mean we were crossing, because we'd each take a side of the street, we were crossing these dark suburban yards with big trees and bushes. It freaked me out. There were shadows all over the place. And so I would sing to myself. Who knew that Prince's When Doves Cry could keep the bogeyman away? This is what it sounds like when doves cry. But it worked. Music lifted my heart. At the training in Charlotte, a child led 300 people in singing This Little Light of Mine, including a verse that said, all around Border Patrol, I'm gonna let it shine. A United Methodist pastor down there, Laura Birch, was out. She had attended an Ice Watch training. She and another pastor were out scouting out a location when they saw two vehicles with men in tactical vests pull up to a barber shop across the street from where they were. So they were there together, and they did exactly what they had learned at the training. They pulled out their cell phones to start making video, and they pulled out whistles to start alerting the neighbors to danger. Laura Birch says that when the agents saw the two pastors there, they were both wearing their stoles. They stayed in their cars and never got out of their cars, and then they turned around and they drove away. I'm sure that those two pastors felt some fear, two carloads of men in tactical vests. But they did not let it dictate what they did next, because they also felt their training kick in. They also heard the song of their moral clarity. They also, in the Holy of Holies that is the human heart, saw the glowing presence of other people of conscience moving in solidarity with them. Vahavta, and you shall love. Another world is possible. So, hold hands, share water, keep imagining, so that we and the children of our children's children may live. This is God's good news. Amen.